I quit smoking about 5 weeks ago. Now, smoking and I have had a lifelong love affair. I'd break up with her and she'd come calling me back, and I'd go back to her every single time. My life's changed a lot for me during the pandemic. I don't go out hardly at all, but it's given me more time to, play guitar, play video games, and I like that. And my wife and I, we've decided to put a garden in. Now, I know the rule is don't go too big the first year. So we just tilled out like a small plot in the yard, like maybe 4 by 8. And to be honest, it looks like a grave, like a freshly dug grave. So I'd be sitting out on the patio, smoking a cigarette, looking at this freshly dug grave. And if I'm honest with myself, I'd say that really helped me to quit. So life has changed for my wife too. She works for the police department. They don't go out on medical calls anymore. And they're told not to stop anybody unless it's something really serious. So let me tell you, if there's a time to like roll through a stop sign or go a few extra miles an hour, now is it. Now, another thing is like because she's a cop, we have a whole bunch of, a big bag of cop stuff in our car. So we've always had plenty of masks. Now, I was resistant to wearing a mask. I'm not really wild about it, but I have to comply like everybody else. So the first time I had to wear a mask, it was going to the supermarket. And it's kind of weird because there's a guard out in front, and you go in and you have to obey the signs that say only one way on this aisle, only one way on that aisle. And so by the time I got to the checkout line, that's when it happened. Like, I got my glasses on, I'm looking in my wallet, and they fog up. I like to think that normal me would have handled that with a little bit more grace. But nicotine starved me. Well, I just tore off the mask and I threw it in the basket like a fit of rage. I'm like, bang! Much to the horror of all the shoppers who were looking at me. So later on that night, sitting on the couch, I just say to my wife, how did we get to this place? She says to me, and this is what I love about her, she says, what place? I'm thinking for a while, and finally I say, what if we get our old lives back and we find out that we liked our new lives better? And I don't know. I hope that doesn't happen. But either way, if it does, and my old girlfriend smoking comes around, I'll have to tell her that I'm over her for good. My name is Charles, and if you believe this is my story, donate $5 to the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund now.
I quit smoking about 5 weeks ago. Smoking and I have had a lifelong love affair where I'd break up with him and then he would come begging me back and I would always take him back. Now, during this pandemic, my life has changed quite a bit. I hardly leave the house at all, but I do have time for cooking and baking now, which I enjoy a lot. And my partner and I decided that we were going to put a garden in. So I used to live in Vermont for a long time, and I know sort of the cardinal rule is don't go too big to start with. So we dug out this modest area, and to be honest, it looks like a grave, like a fresh grave. And I would sit out on my deck in the early stages of the pandemic, smoking my cigarettes and looking at this grave. And I think that really helped me quit. Now, things have changed a lot for my partner too. He's a police officer and they don't go on medical calls anymore. And they are basically told, don't pull anyone over unless it's something really serious. So let me tell you, if there was ever a time to speed through the suburbs of Boston with a headlight out, that time is now. Another thing about it is that he now has this big bag of cop stuff in the seat of our car. And so there's always plenty of face masks. Now, I was really resistant to wearing a face mask, and I'm not wild about them, but obviously I've had to comply like everyone else. But the first time that I wore one was to the supermarket, and it was a little scary. I had to navigate the guard at the door, first of all, and then obey all of the one-way traffic signs. And I finally got to the checkout, and it happened. For the first time, my glasses fogged up. Now, the normal me would have handled that with probably a little bit of grace, but the nicotine-starved me tore it off my face in a fit of rage and threw it into the cart with a lot of bravado, much to the horror of the other onlooking shoppers. So I got home, and that night I was sitting on the couch with my partner, and I suddenly yelled out, "How did we get to this place?" And bless his heart, he said, "What place?" And I explained to him what I meant, and then I was silent for a few moments, and then I softly said, "What if we get our old lives back and we realize we liked our new ones better?" I'm really hoping that that doesn't happen, but either way, when my old boyfriend smoking comes back, I'm going to have to tell him I'm over him for good. If you believe this is my story, please vote for me by donating $5 online to the American Red Cross. Thank you.
I quit smoking. Me and smoking have had a lifelong bad love affair. The kind that you know is wrong, but it feels so good. So I would break up with smoking, and then smoking would come crawling back saying all the right things. And then before I knew it, I had caved. But the pandemic changed things. For one, I barely ever leave the house, which is getting old. I need a haircut like everybody else. But also, to cut the boredom, my landlord and I decided to start a garden. Now, we both know the cardinal rule for new gardeners: don't start big. So we were really good. We dug this nice, like very modest sized little bed right off of the deck that we share. And after we were finished, I stood there looking down, and I swear to God, all I saw was a grave. It looked like a freshly dug grave. So that evening, there I am, sitting on the deck, smoking my cigarettes in the midst of a global respiratory disease pandemic, and staring down at this freshly dug grave I had dug for myself. And let me tell you, friends, if you want to quit, that's a pretty good way. So the other thing that kind of changed in our shared household with the pandemic is that my landlord, who I'm friends with, is also a cop. But they're not going on medical calls anymore, and they're barely pulling anybody over for traffic stops. So she's got this like bag of cop stuff that she's not really using, which has meant that there are plenty of masks to go around, which is handy. Now, masks suck, but I'm getting better about getting used to wearing them. However, the first time out was not a rousing success. Having recently broken up with smoking, I one afternoon found myself in absolutely urgent need of New York Super Fudge Chunk ice cream in order to keep smoking at bay. So I grabbed a mask and I hit the grocery store for the first time since the lockdown. And much to my surprise, when I got there, there's like a guard at the door, and inside all of these traffic signs saying which way you're allowed to walk through the aisles. It was just jarring and weird. And then at checkout, it happened. My glasses fogged up. I had heard people complain about this a little bit, and frankly, I thought they were ridiculous because, let's face it, it's not really that big of a deal. So I like to think that the first time it happened to the normal me, I would have been able to handle it with some modicum of grace. However, the first time it happened to the nicotine-starved ex-lover me, who instead ripped the mask off of my face, threw it onto the floor of the checkout aisle with, shall we say, audible disgust, much to the horror of the bagger and the clerk, judging by the look on their faces. It was so embarrassing. So I just grabbed my ice cream and got out of there. And then later at home, when I was telling my landlord about what happened, I found myself getting all worked up all over again. And I yelled, "How have we gotten to this place?" And this is why we're friends, she just looked at me very calmly and she said, "What place?" And I was like, "What place? What do you mean, what place?" Right? But then I found myself thinking, oh my God, what if we get our old lives back and actually discover that we like our new ones better? I hope that doesn't happen. But there is one thing I can say. When that old lover smoking comes crawling back around again, I am ready to break it to him. We are done for good. My name is Hillary, and if you believe this is my story, please donate now. Vote for me by donating now to Writers for Recovery.